Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Gilda Hilaire, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Salesforce. Welcome to part 2 of Journey Builder Basics, where today you will learn all about personalization, Salesforce cross-cloud, decision splits, and much more, presented by Natalie Starr, Jason Court, and moderated by Jenna Matson. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will save time at the end to go through some of the questions. And just a reminder, we will also send the recording to the webinar and all the links mentioned in the webinar in a follow-up email. Now, without further ado, we will get started. I will turn the time over to Natalie and Jason.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Journey Builder Basics Part 2. My name is Natalie Starr. I'm a marketing technical producer at Acumen Solutions, and I also write for sfmcgeeks.com, which has some great Journey Builder articles for you. My co-host is Jason.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Jason Court. Thanks for joining us for Part 2. I'm the lead application engineer for Salesforce Marketing Cloud at Corp here in the UK, and I'm also the operations manager for How to SFMC, where we share tips, tricks, and challenges for the community to work out how you do things you may not already know how to do in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. In today's session, as Gilda mentioned, we're going to have a quick recap of last week. We're going to dive into some of the cross-cloud capabilities, how you can make the right decision for your contacts in Journey Builder, personalizing content, exits goals, how to optimize a customer path, and we're going to have a quick look at some of the foundations of reporting before we dive into it in more depth next week. So last week we covered a range of the fundamentals and introductory topics of Journey Builder, including what it is, the user interface, some journey types, including a bit of a deep dive into how to configure a single send, and some use cases for multi-steps, including validating, testing, and versioning journeys, should you ever need to iterate on an initial journey. But I'm going to hand over to Natalie to kickstart us off with cross-cloud capabilities with entry sources and activities.
Great. So cross-cloud features are available in Journey Builder. You must have the Marketing Cloud connector installed and integrated. We unfortunately don't have time to go through all of the features enabled by the Marketing Cloud connector on today's session, so we're going to focus on the ones that impact Journey Builder, specifically triggered journey entry and Salesforce activities within the Journey Builder UI. We'll also touch on cross-cloud journey reporting in Part 3 of Journey Builder Basics series next week. If you want more information on the Marketing Cloud connector, please check the resources at the end of the deck. We'll include trails, Salesforce documentations, and of course, links to the recent LookupAnswers session on Marketing Cloud Connect. So let's start at the beginning. Marketing Cloud Connect allows marketers to insert folks into journeys based on actions or data from their Sales and Service Cloud. As part of today's demo, we're going to configure the triggered entry to our journey using the Salesforce data option. I like to think of this as kind of like my cross-cloud spy. It watches a specified object in new records to be created or existing records to be updated to match defined criteria. Those records are then used to insert contacts, leads, and users into my journeys in near real time. We can also enter folks into journeys when they are added to a Salesforce campaign or added to the Salesforce community. The other type of activity that we're going to look at are the Sales and Service Cloud activities. Now, there's really boils down to 3 different types. We've got object-related activities, convert leads, and campaign member activities. Convert lead does exactly what it sounds like. It allows a marketer to convert Sales and Service Cloud leads into a contact or an account. It also allows you to assign a lead owner, notify that person via email, create opportunities. The one thing to note is that Journey Builder does not verify that those leads are qualified before the conversion. So you'll want to make sure that if you're going to use that activity within your journey, that you put the validations and verifications in as part of decision splits, for example. And we're going to go over, Jason's going to go over that a little bit later. Campaign member activity is the other non-object-based offering. But really, it comes down to campaign object activities. These are where you can update an object based on a new record, define what fields you want to add. So this is the most common. So let's get into what that actually looks like. So I have a quick scenario. As a marketer, I want to send all my new leads a welcome series. I have the Marketing Cloud connector set up, and I've integrated my Sales Cloud org. I want new leads that are added to Sales Cloud to be entered into my welcome journey. If they do not engage with my welcome email, I want to open a task for their account rep to reach out. In order to demo cross-cloud for you guys, I've gone ahead and set up a journey in my demo org. So I've already pre-configured the welcome, the weight, and the engagement splits. We went through this as part of Journey Builder Basics 1. Again, we'll have the link down at the bottom of the reference center. So we're going to grab the Salesforce data, and we're going to go ahead and open it up to configure. Now, I already have some existing entry sources selected, but we're going to start from scratch by selecting Salesforce data. Salesforce data, the wizard entry here, is going to allow us to select the object and who should enter. It's going to allow us to pick the entry criteria and what actions we're looking for. We can add additional filter criteria. We can even select entry from different objects to bring over as part of our journey data. So in this case, where we're looking at a new lead, we're going to search for the lead object, and we'll go ahead and open that. Now you can see it's populated a list of all the different users that could enter my journey. This includes my internal folks as well as external. So in this case, where we want to send an email to our lead, we're going to select the lead ID. Since this is specifically to capture new leads, we're going to pick is created as our action. You could also pick is updated, but that's not really what fits in our use case for today. So let's just stick with is created. You can also add specific event criteria. So if there are specific fields or specific parts that must be met on top of it being a brand new member, this is where you could add that. Now, this is specifically looking at your primary object being the object that you are pulling in your audience from. I can add a filter, for example, for San Francisco. Now, in this case, we don't need the filters, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that so we can move forward. You could add additional filters. This is similar to the entry criteria, only this is looking at relative objects. So this is objects that are not your primary object, but are connected to it. Entry data is what we're going to pull in to have access to in our journey. You can see that Salesforce has already selected the email, the opt-out, and the lead ID for us, but we're going to add a couple more things. So we're going to go back into our lead object. We're going to select the owner ID. Now this is the account rep, so this is the person who I want to reach out to them. And then let's also grab their first name so we have it available for personalization down the line. The summary here has a breakdown of all the different pieces in a really easy way to read. And the nice thing is that once you have submitted, it's going to show that summary right here on the canvas for you. So let's pull in our Sales and Service Cloud activity. In this case, we're going to add a task. We want to add a task for the account rep to reach out if the engagement with email 1 is on the no path. So specifically, since we're looking to see if they've opened email 1, we're going to put it for the folks who did not open. So let's go ahead and click in and configure our task. we're going to create a new task, and then we're going to map some fields. So the assign to ID, this is where we can tell Salesforce who I want this to be assigned to. Here's where we're going to select the owner ID that we brought in as part of our journey data. Next, we want to select who is this about. Again, we're going to come down to ID from the journey data, and you can see it already has a lead ID populated for you. We always want to put a subject on our tasks so people can tell what it is. So we're going to go ahead and call this new lead follow-up. This will be the name for this task every time this task is made. Last but not least, we're going to add one optional field. So all of these different fields are fields that are available on the task object, and you can populate these with data that you've either specified, marketing cloud data, journey data, contact data, or in this case where it's a pick list, I can actually just select one of the options from the pick list. So here, I'm going to give the task a quick name, but you can see here are the fields that we just mapped so that when a person reaches this point in the journey, it's going to send over a message to the Sales Cloud asking them to create a task assigned for and for what. So I've included a couple of slides in here so that you have it. This is just a breakdown of the data entry source that we went over, reminding you what all of those different pieces are. And then I also have a slide for the task. Just listing out what the different pieces are that I pulled in. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Jason.
So as Natalie just mentioned, that you can use decision splits and to flow people through your journeys in the most appropriate ways based on the data you have about them. And decision splits allow Marketing Cloud users to determine the flow, cadence, and channel of communications based on known data points of a contact. So if you have specific timings or channels that you've determined are most appropriate for a contact or a group of contacts, you can use decision splits to guide people down the right paths. You can also use decision splits to support with multiple content creatives or anything to do with how you want your contacts to move through the journey. And it gives you a one-stop shop if you have a broad campaign with lots of requirements to push multiple paths in one place. Decision splits are the only element of flow control that allow you to interact with both contact data and journey data when you make a decision. And I'm going to cover the difference between the two just now. I think one of the key things to understand with journey data and contact data is that journey data is the snapshot of what happens or what a person is when they enter a journey. So it's a printed piece of paper of here is everything we know about this person when they enter the journey. It does tend to be quicker, and it does use the attribute at the time of entry as opposed to the time of evaluation in the decision split. So if you have a contact due to enter multiple times, whether it's an abandoned basket type campaign where they could have different products for a different basket abandoned, you want to have different content to support that. This is great for that because you can push people down different paths. And it's also useful to compare or as a comparison point when data is expected to change. Whereas contact data takes the current data relating to a contact through the attribute groups. It can be a little less quick because you're having to look up through to the attribute group to find the data you're making the decision on, but it uses the attribute at the time of evaluation as opposed to the time of entry. So if, for example, you were looking at a recent purchase date, someone may have entered a journey with a recent purchase date of 3 weeks ago, but if in the last 2 weeks they've made another purchase, you may not want them to continue through the journey or go down a different path in that journey. The way I've described this in the past is when your journey data is a printed train ticket, whereas contact data is your app with all of your tickets on, so that if someone asks to see, are you supposed to be on the train, you can show them the right ticket and there's no issues. Whereas if you get on with just one ticket, that's all you've got. But attribute groups are configured within Contact Builder and within Data Designer. So if you've looked at Contact Builder and seen Data Designer, you'll probably recognize this hub and spoke view of data within your Marketing Cloud business unit. Each attribute group can be a collection of multiple data extensions or just one, all featuring different relationship types. So you do get one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. Today, we're going to focus on one-to-one because whilst a contact may enter a journey more than once, the relationship between that journey and Contact Builder is basically a one-to-one, or the contacts within the journey and Contact Builder is one-to-one. So it's important to be aware of how you configure your decision splits around that. So if I just cover one-to-many or many-to-many rather quickly, if a contact enters a journey and you have a decision split based on a one-to-many or many-to-many relationship, the decisions will resolve based on the first record that Journey Builder finds. So the example on the right there is if a customer has made a purchase of Northern Trail Outfitters or a customer has made a purchase from Cumulus, they may have made both purchases and purchased from both suppliers, but they will only go down one path, and the path they go down will be based on the first record that Journey Builder finds. So you may have a customer who has bought lots of things and transacted with Northern Trail Outfitters 10, 15 times, but transacted with Cumulus once. Whilst the odds may be heavily in Northern Trail Outfitters' favor in that scenario, there is still the opportunity that they will travel down the Cumulus route if that's the first result that is found in your one-to-many relationship. Whereas if you have a one-to-one relationship, and if you've structured your data to have a summary data extension for all purchases, you'd be able to create a decision split using that data without needing to worry too much, because you'll have one row that summarizes all the details about that contact. So in this instance, we're looking at the last order date, which at a contact level, there is one row that will summarize for every individual when their last order date was. So if the last order date is before today minus 24 months, path one, and so on and so forth with the other elements of the decision splits. So here's an example of an attribute group. If I just whiz through this, you can see we've got the contacts in the demo underscore contacts underscore C on the left relating to the contacts. So the contact key element is what links back to the hub and spoke, so the core hub of contact. And we have a one-to-many relationship between contacts and orders, because one person may have made multiple orders. We've got a one-to-many between orders and order lines, because one order may have multiple products. We've also got a many-to-one in order lines to products, because one product may be in multiple orders. So what we've got tied in at the bottom there is the demo contacts logic, which is the summary view of purchases for this sample attribute group, where we can see for each contact what their last order date was, have they ever cancelled an order, have they received an order, Have they bought a product from a particular brand or a particular supplier? And we can expand that as and is appropriate. You can have multiple iterations of this based on purchases, engagement, whatever fits your use case. But having that one-to-one relationship gives you a really robust way of supporting your decision making in Journey Builder. And whilst decisioning is really important and really useful, personalization is something that I think Natalie can add a lot of flavor to.
Great, thanks, Jason. So we've all seen personalization in the body of our emails, but I wanted to touch base on it in relation to Journey Builder. The reason for this is that Journey Builder handles some of the personalization strings a little bit different. So just to make sure everyone knows, personalization strings are made up of percent signs tied with an attribute column's name. For example, %% first name, %%. When the message is sent, it is validated and each personal string is rendered, showing the intended attribute value by calling it from the journey data. Now, this is the important piece. When you enter a contact into Journey, a snapshot of their information is taken and put into the journey data. This is what the personalization strings are going to be referencing. If you want to use non-journey data for personalization, I would strongly recommend that you use AmpScript instead. You don't have to, but AmpScript is going to give you far more abilities to be specific about what object you want to pull things from if you're pulling from Salesforce, or what data extension from Marketing Cloud. It also lets you use that variable or that value for things like a fallback statement. So if there is no value, you can fall back to something else. We don't have time to go through how to do AmpScript, but there was a 2-part session on AmpScript basics earlier this year, and I've got the link here, and we'll have the link again down in the resource section. I want to call out personalization specifically and the Salesforce data entry. When you're using Salesforce data as an entry source, you can identify what fields you want from that object. That was the entry data that we had. This is going into your journey data. So those fields are then available to use for personalization, but they name the fields in relation to the objects they're from. So the primary object and field name, for example, our lead and ID, make total sense. But once you start looking at fields from relative objects, now you're going to have the original object and then the related object, and you could have multiple related objects before you actually make it to the field name. So here you can see, to get to my account rep's name, I've got lead, owner, user, and then the field name. One trick that I strongly recommend is to build your audience and add a filter looking for only one email address so that you can test it without having to worry about pulling everybody in. When you activate the journey, Journey Builder will build that journey data as a data extension. You can then go and see exactly what those field names will look like. You can also see it in the summary on the entry data. These, again, can be placed in your subject line, in the content. These are just ways that you can add more personalization in that one-to-one. So I'm going to pass this back over to Jason to talk about journey exits and goals.
Perfect. So we've talked about how we manage the flow of contacts through a journey, how we personalize the content, but there are definitely scenarios where you want to track a specific type of event, or there may be a reason you want someone to no longer continue down the flow of a journey. And you can achieve these with journey exits and journey goals. So journey exits allow you as a Marketing Cloud user to programmatically and automatically remove contacts from a journey whilst it is active. Your exit criteria can be simple or complex. I know some places that have had a specific field in an attribute group that was just remove this person from journeys. or you can have some really complicated requirements, but this only uses contact data. There's no reference to journey data here. And you wouldn't necessarily want to have an exit criteria that's based on a static piece of data that someone enters a journey with anyway. So exit criteria is evaluated at the point of ending a wait step. And it's important to know that, because if you have a 10-day wait between email 1 and email 2, and on day 2, someone would meet the criteria to exit, they wouldn't necessarily exit at that point. If at day 10 of that wait, they are still due to exit and still meet the criteria to exit, then they would exit. So commonly you would want to use exits for when the contact in your journey is no longer supposed to be in the journey, but that reason for them to not be there isn't an objective of the journey, so a cross-sell or an upsell kind of campaign. And your exit criteria is associated with a journey version. So you'll be able to configure journey exits by jumping into the little icon in the UI that we covered last week. You click on that and you can configure your exit criteria there. The advice from Salesforce is to have less than 20 filter criteria to make sure your exits are performant. If you go too far beyond that, your exits may not perform as you would expect, and you may get people who slip through. So try and keep it less than 20 filter criteria if possible. If you need more than that, then it's probably worth summarizing it with some SQL or something along those lines as a specific attribute. So some examples for journey exits. If you have a welcome campaign and a customer has now created a support case, you probably want to stop talking to them about them signing up. If you're offering discounts for cross-sells and the customer's cancelled their purchase, you don't want to give away money for someone who's not bought anything. And if a customer unsubscribes and you're tracking engagement through the journey, you probably don't want to keep tracking that activities for your re-engagement campaign. And for goals, they are similar in a lot of ways to exit criteria, but you don't necessarily have to throw someone out of the journey. So if you do have a campaign where an event type has to happen, or an event has to happen for the goal to be met, and that goal data is available in Marketing Cloud, you can start tracking the success of your campaigns through journey goals. And you can configure the goal with the same performance considerations as you would with exit criteria, keeping it to less than 20 if possible. The key difference is that you can provide a detailed view of what the target state is. So in the screenshot on the right, you can see I want a number of total people. You can configure this to the number of, or a percentage of the population. And you keep a little bit of flavor text there that says, I want 35% of the customers who enter this journey to buy an additional product, so that you can see at a glance what your goals are, and you can see when we get to some of the reporting elements of today where that can live and where you can see that. One of the key things is that just because a customer reaches a goal, they don't have to exit the journey. So if you do have a campaign that requires some kind of objectives to be met, but there are still opportunities, you don't have to remove them from the journey. For example, a cross-sell, if someone has created an additional purchase of a related product and your journey is set to re-enter only after exiting, you may not want to remove someone from that journey to just come straight back in and start at the beginning, whereas they could finish the full cross-sell campaign. And for a re-engagement campaign, if someone has updated their preferences, you may not want to remove them from the journey. You may actually want to use decision splits based on their new preferences to divert them down highly engaging content based on their new preferences, as opposed to bringing them into standard BAU type campaigns.
All right.
Over to Natalie to talk a bit about the new feature of Path Optimizer.
I know that everybody is super excited to learn more about what Path Optimizer is. So Path Optimizer is the new tool that was released for Journey Builder that's going to give marketers the ability to do variant testing, A/B, ABC. In fact, you can have up to 10 different variances to test with. This lets you test content, frequency of sends, and the messaging channel. You can have the winner selected automatically, or you can manually select it. You can also identify how long you want to monitor the engagement before a decision is made. Once the winner's been chosen, all new entries reaching that point will then receive the winning path moving forward. There's also some test summary analytics that you can see during the test and historical stats. The things that are available to you to put inside of Path Optimizer are messaging. So we can put our email, SMS, all the mobile messaging. We can add wait activities. We can add sales and service cloud activities, update contact, and we can even add custom built activities. The activities that you cannot put within a Path Optimizer path is anything that's going to split your path into multiple paths. Path Optimizer, while you can have up to 10 variants to test, each of those variants cannot split into 2 pieces or 3 pieces or based on engagement. All of that would need to be done outside of Path Optimizer. So talking about winner evaluation. If you're running lots of tests, there are 2 ways to identify what the winner is for your test. One of them is automated, and it's the email engagement data. Now, this is only available for email engagement at this time. It's going to specifically look to see that they were either on the click rate, open rate, or unsubscribe rate. One of those metrics will be measured to distinguish the winner. You can select how long you want to monitor the segment before the winner is chosen. One thing to note, if you are testing weights, for example, you have 3 paths, one with a 1-day wait, one with a 2-day wait, one with a 4-day wait. If I select that I want to monitor the engagement before the winner is chosen for 2 days, I first have to finish the longest path before those 2 days will start. So in the case where I have a wait that has 4 days, I have to get through that 4 days before the 2 days of my test engagement monitoring will start. So really, it's going to run for 6 days. If you have selected the email engagement data as your way to evaluate the winner, you can change to manual after go live, and we'll show you where that is in just a moment. I know that not all of the variant tests are going to be tied to email metrics. Can we go back a slide? Sometimes the thing that's going to decide your winner is going to be outside data or conversions or data that's looking at both pieces inside of your BI and Marketing Cloud. In those kinds of cases, you can select manual selection, and this will give you the opportunity as the marketer to then select which path is the winner. So if you've got a really robust analytics with lots of different pieces, this might be a really great option for you. Within Path Optimizer, we can do splits and holdback. So splits is going to be where we can identify how many paths we want to test. We can define how much traffic should go to each path, and the only rule is that it has to add up to 100% of traffic. The splits is specifically looking at the traffic that you want to send through the testing process. But if you have a really large audience, you may not want to send everybody through the test. You might want to hold back a good chunk of that audience so that it will take the path that you've designed as the winner. In this case, you could use the holdback feature. So the holdback feature, again, this is the amount of traffic that will wait until a winner has been declared. It will proceed only down the winning path, but it is also only available for one-time scheduled journeys tied to data extensions. So if you're using things like Salesforce data or Salesforce campaign cross-cloud, you won't be able to use the holdback feature within Path Optimizer. One thing to note about Path Optimizer is how it interacts with splits. The split of your traffic into multiple paths needs to happen outside of Path Optimizer. Path Optimizer is only looking within its little category of things. So for instance, if I have an email and I want to test my follow-up email, but I want to know what the winner is for the folks who did open my follow-up email and for the folks that did not open my follow-up email. Now, the Path Optimizer on both of these paths is exactly the same. I've put in the same email 2A and the same email 2B in both sets, but this is going to allow me to see the winner for my engaged traffic and the winner for my non-engaged traffic. Path Optimizer can be used in multiple places within your journey. So you can have email 1, you can have a Path Optimizer, and then you can do it again for email 3. The one thing to note is that engagement splits are unable to reference emails that are within the Path Optimizer. It's only going to reference the emails that are not. It doesn't understand how to find the email because it doesn't know which one they may have gotten. One of the things that came up when I was working on setting this up is that I had the wait, because I was testing my wait periods inside of my Path Optimizer. When I went to put my engagement split after my Path Optimizer, it didn't recognize the wait because, again, it was within the Path Optimizer. So I had to add an additional wait activity so that the engagement split could see the email. In this case, I just added a 5-minute wait just so that there was a wait activity so it could pass validation. If you're looking to do splits for engagement based on what they did within email 2 in this example, you would need to create a data extension and populate it with SQL from the send log so that you have that value available. And then you would use a decision split, similar to what Jason showed earlier. Now, Path Optimizer has some really interesting reporting for you to take a look at. This is what the reporting looks like when your test is in process. If you click on the activity from the Journey Builder canvas, this is what will come up. Here you can see how each path is doing based on open rate, click rate, unsubscribe rate. But here's also where you can override the automated and pick your own winning path. So again, if you've selected to have Path Optimizer pick your winner for you, but you realize within 3 days that, hey, I already know who the winner is, let's move on and get other things done, you could always come in here and click the Select Winning Path button, and that'll allow you to then go and do a manual selection of what path is your winner. Once the test is completed, you're going to see another section show up on that Path Optimizer summary page. This is going to show you post-test performance. So this is going to give you the ability to see how that winning path has done since the test was completed. This is a really great way when you are looking back at journeys and want to see what the history was or what the decision place was. But it's also a great place to double check to make sure that that winning path is still meeting the goals that you were looking for. So speaking of reporting, I'm going to pass this back to Jason so he can give us a sky-high view of some of the different reporting options.
So when it comes to using Journey Builder, there's a few areas to really consider what to report on and areas to report on around performance from a platform perspective, at a campaign level, and from a customer perspective. As this is the first step into the conversation around reporting, we're going to focus on some of the platform stuff, and we'll cover some more details around campaigns and customers in next week's session. So once you've activated your campaign, you do gain access to Journey Analytics dashboards and the Journey Health dashboard. So on the right, you can see the Journey Analytics dashboard, and that gives you a channel by channel summary of how the journey is performing across the whole end to end. It's a great snapshot. So you see in the top right hand corner of that screenshot, there is a date range. You can obviously tweak that date range, and you can quickly change that time frame if you need to do any comparisons on a day by day or week by week basis. By default, the channels that are included in this dashboard are the ones that are present in the journey. So email will pretty much always be there for most journeys, and you can just click edit and you can add the modules for SMS and push. And Journey Health gives you a far more clinical view of the journey, to include goal completions, current counts of people within the journey, and the recent release gives you a nice user-friendly way to remove people from a journey using the contact key. Previously, there were a lot of workarounds or custom solutions that people were using exit criteria, decision splits, or even using the Journey Builder API to remove people from journeys in times when that was necessary. Obviously, people needing to be removed from a journey is not necessarily a time where you want to spend time creating something custom or retrofitting something. So adding this is a much appreciated new feature. But a key one to keep an eye on is the alerts at the very bottom, which has contacts past due in their wait. So if a contact has been in their wait for more than 60 minutes beyond what they should have been there, that number will increase. And it's a really useful way to monitor if there's any performance issues within a journey or within Journey Builder across your tenant. Because if you remember last week, we mentioned the 2 million activities per hour throughput. So if you're spotting that there's a lot of people stuck in a contacts past due in wait, you may have some journeys that are still running that are not doing anything, some journeys that aren't necessarily optimized as you've grown your use of Journey Builder. So it's a really useful way just to get a quick view of how Journey Builder is performing on the whole within your org. And once your campaign is active, to get a bit more specific in your analytics compared to the overall journey dashboard, you can click into each of the messaging activities, and they transition from the config to the analytics. And you can take a look here. In this sample, we've got a real top level view of that specific element within the journey. And again, much like the Journey Analytics dashboard, it's based on the time frame declared in the top right corner. That's the one that I normally miss. So when I'm looking and seeing I've got no sends, it's normally because I've not gone back and checked the time frame to make sure it's looking at the right period for the journey being active. But you can click into view details, and once you're in there, you can see a bit more depth around the email performance, click activities, and even specific contacts. So if you have an instance where a contact has reached out because they were expecting an email from you, you can check to see if that email was sent through Journey Builder. You can check to see if it was opened, clicked, or if it bounced, so that you can provide that customer experience and that feedback to those individuals who may reach out through social channels or even phoning a contact center. And that's as deep into reporting as we're going to go today, looking at the platform and the overall journey performance. Next week, we're going to look more about campaign reporting and contact level reporting. There's some great tools from Salesforce Labs that have recently been introduced to monitor journey performance in Sales Cloud and Service Cloud. So we might cover that in a bit more depth next week. But I think now, summary for next week, we're going to cover some more reporting. We're going to look at the smart capture for journey entry, look at some of the Einstein capabilities, add studio, pausing a journey, and for when you've got loads of journeys and you want to template some stuff, how you can template your journeys to make it quicker to deploy for future journey deployments. And with that, I'm gonna pass this over to Jenna for some Q&A.
All right, thank you guys. That was very, very informative. And we have lots of questions coming in. Everybody in the audience, we're gonna run over just a few minutes here trying to answer all of your questions. If we do not get to all the questions that were answered, they will be answered by Jason and Natalie after the webinar and sent out with the slides and the recap. So if we don't get to you, do not worry, your question will be answered. All right, so starting at the top here, how do we create a custom report of contacts rejected by Journey Builder when we process DE records with a custom activity? Is that possible in the Marketing Cloud?
So with a custom activity that pushes them into the journey, like through an API, or is there anything more detailed about that?
No, it just says, yeah, no, they didn't give any more detail. They were just talking about when I guess records from a data extension are processed using a custom activity. They want to know if there's a report that they could find which records did not make it into the pass, I guess the no pass maybe? I'm not sure.
So there's nothing specifically out of the box that's, really click and press a button, here you go. For that instance, what I'd normally do is the first point at which a contact enters the journey, use the update contact to make a note of every contact that has entered the journey. And then I would compare what I was expecting versus what has happened and just do a comparison between those two data sets.
That makes sense. So query against a log or.
Yeah. For emails, you can always use the not sent event SOAP object if it's an email specific issue. If it's just entering into the journey, then I'll probably go that way.
Makes sense. All right, this is a good one. Kind of a getter. If you want to add columns of data to your Salesforce data entry extension after creating the journey, will you need to recreate the whole entry source configuration again?
If you want to
add values.
If you're looking to add values, most of the time, yes, you're going to need to recreate your audience. Once it's been activated, it is now pretty much locked in. Also, because that entry can be used on other journeys. So make sure that you are not editing one that is tied to multiple journeys. So what I would recommend is, yes, go ahead and delete that audience. And on your new version, go ahead and recreate with the list of fields that you're looking for.
Excellent, thank you, Natalie. Appreciate that. All right, this next one is a good one, actually.
Go on, sorry.
Pardon, Jason?
So it probably also depends on the reason of adding columns. If you're adding columns for decision splits, then obviously if you have synchronized objects from Salesforce, you could use those. Or if it's for personalization, you can use some of the AMP script functions that were gone into a bit more depth in the AMP script basics sessions the other day or the other week with the retrieve Salesforce object AMP script functions, and you could actually include those in the content if it's not necessary to have in the journey data itself.
That makes sense too. So you have to think about the contact model whenever you're adjusting the data sets for your entry in the journey. All right. So when you guys were referring to converting a lead, did you mean a lead can be converted in a journey, or that a journey entry will happen upon a lead conversion from a connected org?
So you can launch folks into a journey based on when it is converted inside of your Salesforce org. But in this case, we were actually talking about sending from Journey Builder to your Salesforce org the request to convert that lead. So that is an activity that you can have start from Marketing Cloud and update your Sales or Service Cloud.
Got you. And what type of task? What type of task would you add for Sales Cloud? Or would it be the same there? Update contact.
So there's lots of different options in regards to tasks. Task is a object, so you can use either the object activity or the task activity to update, and then you can pick from the different fields what it is that you are looking for it to work on.
Got you. Very cool. All right, can decision splits evaluate contact data from the synchronized data extensions, or do we need to create a standard data extension that is updated from Salesforce Sync data in order to evaluate the contact data? If we need to use a standard DE, I'm also assuming that we will need to be mapping via Contact Builder too, right? It's a good double part question there.
So
let me know.
yeah, so it kind of depends. If you are running your journey in the business unit that has the synchronized data extension or synchronized objects in, by default, your synchronized data is put into an attribute group and is mapped very closely to what you would have in Sales and Service Cloud. Normally, what I find to be most effective is to move them into a standard data extension, purely because if you've got multiple business units and you're just integrated at the enterprise and sharing data between your enterprise and your child business units, then you won't necessarily have the synchronized data available in the child business units. So consistency would normally make a lot of sense to take it from the synchronized objects into standard data extensions, where you can tweak or make any amendments that you need to make. There's nothing to stop you from using the synchronized objects if you're in the right business unit.
Yep. Thank you, Jason. All right. Back to tasks. Is there a way to have a task sent as a mail or as an email, I'm assuming, not within Salesforce, to an email address and the data extension?
So yes, there is a way to do so. There's a couple of different options. One of the options that you can do, if you want the task activity to still be created in your Salesforce org, you can use the task activity to create that task. And then you can also have a entry source for a second journey that is looking at tasks for those new activities that then triggers off an email to your account rep or to whomever you are looking for that email to go through.
Okay. Thanks, Natalie. That makes sense. Is there a best practice to create an attribute group specific, or is it a best practice to create attribute groups specific to each journey, even if there are several journeys that may use the same data?
I'm personally a firm believer of don't repeat yourself. If you've got the same attribute that can be used 10 times, just create it once and reference it 10 times rather than create it 10 times and reference each time individually. So if there is an attribute that is person has opened an email in the last 3 days and you use that for 5 journeys, you can use that same attribute in all 5 journeys. I think it works best to not repeat yourself in that respect, so you can have consistency, and you do run the risk of having the same attribute multiple times. If you were to go and pick the wrong version of it that was calculated in a different way, you may not get the results you were expecting. So I think one way of working, if possible, and if you can use it for multiple journeys, then you're in for a winner.
Yeah, I agree. That's the whole beauty behind the object-oriented process, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So this is a good one. How do we decide, or how does it decide which record it finds first in a one-to-many relationship? Is it based on the created or updated date of the record that it's looking for, or is it random?
It depends on which part of the documentation you look at, unfortunately. So the way I normally work through this is I prioritize my decisions. So if I want my priority decision is to go down path A, and that maybe in the example in the situation provided earlier was has purchased from Northern Trail Outfitters and then has purchased from Cumulus. By the most common outcome in that instance is it checks the all records to see if they have met the criteria for the first decision and then moves to the second one. At least that's how it has been in the last few releases. I know before that it may have been slightly less consistent as that. There's plenty of comments on this subject on Stack Exchange where people have faced some of those queries. So I would normally prioritize the decisions to make that happen. If there's anything that you need to definitely happen, I would have it as a separate decision split and have one key decision split that is just, has this happened, yes or no, and then do any subsequent splits later down the line and join up as and when is appropriate if that is necessary.
Now, one of the really nice things about Journey Builder is that you can nest splits within other splits. So if you have a journey and you've already got a decision split with that really important thing, you can put a decision split as your next activity to do the next, to look at the next decision.
All right. I think we have time for one more kind of big question. So I'm going to throw this last one out here. And like I said earlier, guys, to everybody in the audience, we will be sending out a recording of this, and we will try to answer, and Jason and Natalie will try to answer as many of the questions that we did not get to, because there are a ton of questions here that we are not going to be able to get to today. So for our last question here, if there, okay, they're asking if there is time, so I'm going to make time. Is there any insight into options that may have been created to move entries from one journey in a journey from one version to another? I know you said previously this could not be done, but I'm curious if anybody has any creative solutions that you may have heard of in order to accomplish this.
So
we're talking about moving subscribers.
So I have found some different ways to get around that. Now, just to make sure everybody is on the same page, Journey Builder, when you go from one version to the next, what it does is it moves the entry point. So all of the new entries after that point will go into the new journey, but anybody who was in the previous version will complete that previous version. The way that I got around this was that I have a data extension that I update using update contact after they finish each of the different steps. So this allows me to have a decision split at the beginning of my journey, so that if you've got this step completed, you go to the next decision split. If you've got this one, go to the next one. And so what I can do is then when I need to move people from one to the next, I can stop that version, kick everybody out, and then re-enter them into the new version and have those decision splits tied to those update contact fields to basically skip them forward to where they would have been.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's one of the resources we referenced last week, one of the blogs from Adam Spriggs about journey logging using update contact. That's a really useful way to jump people forward in a new version of a journey. So definitely, I don't know if we've got it in the resources for this week, but I think it's probably one that we can add again, because it's a brilliant write-up on how you can use something like an update contact to encourage contacts to flow to the right elements of a new journey and new journey version.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for answering that. And with that, we're going to sign off for today. Natalie, Jason, thank you both so much for answering everybody's questions and doing these sessions. Everybody on the call, we have another session next week. On Tuesday, we're going to do the final session talking about Ad Studio, reporting and the data views, Cloud Pages or Smart Capture as an alternative entry source, and Journey Builder templates. So please join Natalie and Jason next week, and Karina Cohen will be the moderator next week. If you have any questions between now and then, you can find Natalie on her blog. Natalie, what's the name of your blog again?
sfmcgeeks.com.
There we go, sfmcgeeks.com, guys, go check that out. Or she is on Email Geek Slack, and she is also a member of the How to SFMC community, which is where you can find Jason as well, on howtosfmc.com. Also, we will be posting these videos on howtosfmc.com in just a couple of weeks here, so if anybody misses the recap or wants a centralized location to go look these up again, you can do it in that location. Lastly, Gilda, as always, thank you so much for hosting us and hosting our community, and allowing us to get greater insight into the Marketing Cloud and how to use it. We appreciate it. All right, guys, thank you so much, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.